Hey everybody, I'm Jordan with Sandcraft Motorsports DIY Install. Today we're going to be installing a Driveline Carrier Bearing combination and a 4-seat Pro R. We're going to start the install by removing the skid plate with all 4 wheels on the ground so we can access our jack points. After removing your 21 skid plate bolts, you might notice that there is 2 that are significantly longer than the rest. And the long ones go to hold 3 pieces of plastic together at the rear outer section. For this installation, you will need all 4 tires off of the ground. Now we're going to remove the 4 crossmember mounting bolts. They're 13 millimeter. It'll allow the crossmember to come down so I can slide the drive shaft rear and disengage from the middle. Now I'm going to remove the front differential 5/16 roll pin going from the driver's side upwards towards the passenger side so that we don't drive the pin into the actuator solenoid. After removing the access panel underneath the gas pedal, remove the 21 millimeter upper rear control arm bolt. We're now going to remove the front fascia to expose any electrical holding our front bumper on the vehicle. Now I'm going to remove the front wheels to gain access to the steering knuckle assemblies. Outer tie rod end first, and that'll expose our caliper hanger hardware, and then we'll free up the brake hose. Then what we're going to do is zip tie it all together. So now we're going to remove the upper ball joint retainer, the axle retaining nut, and the lower ball joint nut. All the hardware is removed and the ball joint's loose. We're just going to pull the last pin here and the knuckle should be free. Now I'm going to remove the upper control arm front retaining bolt, and that's basically going to let my arm free, and then I'm going to use a tie down to actually hang the arm back off by the vehicle tie down location. So now we're going to undo the upper sway link bolt, and that's just to free up the weight of the arms because we will be undoing both shock lower bolts. While we're on the driver's side, we're going to disconnect the front differential 4-wheel drive locker solenoid, and then we're going to go to the front differential mounting hardware to where the adjustable brackets mount to frame, and we're only going to loosen them a half turn. Moving over to the passenger side, we're going to do a lot of the same, but only to achieve getting the front axle out of the differential. So the control arm will stay attached to the car, but we will have to move everything up and away to get that happen. I've found that the vent hose is actually a formed hose, so I prefer to remove the hose from where it vents into the frame. Last electrical connector is the 4-wheel drive engagement connector solenoid. So now for removing the differential, we're going to remove these long bolts that the differential is suspended from. You want to be careful not to have your fingers underneath the diff because it is heavy, it will come down. So now I'm completely disconnected and just hanging from the 2 mounting bolts. Go ahead and pop these out. And we'll remove the front differential. And now you have enough space to remove the drive shaft through the front of the vehicle. So here we have our brand new Sandcraft 4-seat Driveline unboxed. What we're going to do is disconnect the factory carrier bearing from the crossmember and mount up our new one and start with the reinstallation process. So now we're going to remove the factory carrier bearing from the crossmember and then reinstalling the Sandcraft carrier bearing with new drive shaft. And so at this time you can go and lock down the base plate mounting bolts at 22 foot-pounds, but you want to leave the carrier bearing bolts loose for bearing alignment, and we'll show you that during installation. So on one end of the front half drive shaft is the longer slip yoke with the grease zerk. That is the middle section of the drive shaft. Also, while you have the differential out on the bench or on the floor, it's a decent time to go ahead and do a service because you have easy access to the fill plug. We're now going to be reinstalling the through bolts. Now we can get our front mounting nut on, get it started. So first we're going to tighten our hanging bolts, and then we're actually going to tighten our verticals on the other side of the differential. Now we're going to reconnect our four-wheel drive solenoids and reroute our vent tube. All right, so you want to identify that the master spline for the middle section is in line with the grease zerk. So we're going to take the rear half, we're going to slide it all the way onto the transmission to where it'll pass through, line up the master, and go forward. Carrier bearing is still loose to the base. So now that the cross member and rear half are temporarily installed with just 2 bolts, we're going to go ahead and remove the exposed Allen screw, put some thread locker on, and then tighten it down. Once it's in place and tightened down, we can lower the cross member again and then tighten the upper concealed Allen screw. Now that the carrier bearing angle is set, we can go and reinstall the cross member with all 4 bolts. We'll attach the drive shaft halves. So we're going to slide the front half of the drive shaft up to the pinion that the master spline is in line with the through hole. You can now install the roll pin. Now that the front is trapped, we're going to install the race collar on the front side of the carrier bearing. And what it is, essentially, is a bar clamp to lock the drive line in place from ever coming out of the bearing. So once the race collar is installed, what you want to do is go up and down the drive shaft and hit all the zerks, because you won't be back in for another 50+ hours. And that pretty much wraps up the actual driveline installation. From there, you just reassemble in reverse order following manufacturer specifications. Thanks for watching another Sandcraft DIY installation video. I'm Jordan, and enjoy the ride.